We arrived at the estate in early summer, when the heat settled gently over the fields and the air felt heavy with the promise of long, quiet days. From the moment the carriage stopped before the old house, I felt a strange mixture of awe and unease. The place was enormous, far bigger than we needed, with long halls, shuttered windows, and a loneliness that seemed to cling to its walls. John stepped out with his usual calm confidence, already sure that this place would help me recover. He believed a few months in the countryside would be enough to fix what he called my temporary nervous trouble. I kept trying to explain that my condition was not so simple. There were moments when my thoughts spun too fast, and others when they slowed so much that I could barely put them into words. Writing helped, but John said writing tired me out. He said I needed rest and as little mental activity as possible. He meant well, but sometimes his calm voice only made me feel smaller, as if I didn't understand my own mind. Inside the house, the rooms felt untouched for years. Dust lingered in corners despite the attempt to clean before our arrival. The floors creaked in a way that made me think of footsteps that had long faded. There was something oddly hollow about the place, like a shell that someone had lived in once but no longer needed. I told John it made me uneasy, but he said it was only my imagination. He chose the room at the top of the house for me. A nursery, he said, though I couldn't imagine children living in it. The windows were barred, not in a menacing way perhaps, but still unsettling. The wallpaper struck me immediately. It was a dull, sickly yellow that looked aged by sun and neglect. The pattern twisted into shapes that made no sense, an odd combination of curves and angles that seemed to move if I stared too long. I told John the room felt wrong. He laughed gently and said I must not give in to such fancies. I promised to try. After all, I wanted to get bet. The days blended together in a slow, heavy way, as if time itself had thickened in that upper room. I woke late in the mornings, not because I slept well but because my dreams left me drained. I tried to follow the routine John set for me. I tried to sit in the garden, to breathe the warm air and feel the quiet peace he promised. But I rarely stayed outside for long. The brightness made me uneasy, and I always felt the pull of the room behind me, as if something waited for me inside. Jenny watched over me when John was away. She was kind and patient, always cheerful in a way that felt both sincere and slightly distant. She said she wanted me to rest and avoid thinking too much. She cleaned the room, folded my clothes, and tried to keep things neat. Yet sometimes I caught her glancing at the wallpaper with a puzzled look, only to turn away the moment she noticed me watching her. I wasn't sure if she saw what I saw or if she was simply disturbed by the ugly pattern. Either way, it made me protective of my own observations. I didn't want anyone else interfering. I spent longer and longer hours studying the wallpaper. At first I only glanced at it when the room grew too quiet. But soon my eyes went to it without my permission. The pattern drew me in. It looped around itself endlessly, tangled in knots that made no sense. If I followed one curve long enough, it split in two like a branching path, then twisted back again as if mocking my efforts to understand it. Behind the outer pattern, faint but unmistakable, the shape of a woman began to appear. At first I noticed her only when the light shifted. A blurred outline leaning forward, as if pressing both palms against the inside of the wall. She stayed still when I stared directly at her, but in the moments when I turned away or blinked, she moved. I could see the lines of her form shift, almost like a shadow stretching across a surface. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks. But the more I watched, the more the house felt different as the days moved closer to the end of our stay. I couldn't explain it to John or Jenny, but something in the air had shifted. It felt heavier at night, thick enough that I sometimes struggled to breathe. Even during the day, the quiet halls carried a faint tension, as if the house waited for something to happen. I felt it most in my room. Whenever I stepped inside, the air pressed against me, almost knowingly. The wallpaper had become my constant companion. I knew every loop in its chaotic pattern, every broken curve and crooked line. I studied it until the shapes lived inside my mind. I saw the woman behind the pattern more clearly each day. Her form had grown sharper, her movements more defined. What once looked like a vague shadow now appeared as a full outline of a woman crawling, pushing, struggling to break free. During the daytime she pressed against the bars of the upper pattern, her hands gripping invisible lines that held her in place. At night she slipped down to the floor, creeping along the baseboard with restless energy. She moved in circles, tracing the same path again and again, following the pattern's limits. I felt as if she were wearing a groove into the room, the way an animal might pace inside a cage. Watching her felt natural now. I no longer questioned her presence. She belonged to the room as much as the yellow paper itself. And I knew she was growing more desperate. I tried to mention how trapped she seemed, but when I began explaining it to John, he looked at me with concern instead of curiosity. He said I was overthinking again. He said the rest cure would only work if I stopped letting my imagination wander. He reminded me that I would soon leave the house and that everything troubling me would settle. His calm tone made me uneasy. I felt he didn't see the urgency. He didn't understand how close the woman was to breaking through. After that moment, I stopped trying to convince him. It became clear that he. As the days passed, she stopped pretending around her husband. There was no strength left to keep up small talk or polite smiles. She moved through the room as if it were the only world that still made sense. Every detail of the wallpaper fed her thoughts. She was now convinced the trapped woman had finally found a way to crawl out into her room. The wallpaper no longer frightened her. It felt like a secret she had unlocked, something meant only for her. She slept less each night. Instead she watched, listened and waited. During the early hours before dawn she would lie awake, feeling the air shift. The lines in the wallpaper would shimmer and settle into new shapes. It felt like the room was breathing with her. She began to think the woman behind the patterns was not one person but many. Their outlines overlapped, reaching and twisting. Some nights she felt them leaning close to her bed, whispering without sound. It wasn't madness to her. It was clarity. John dismissed all of it. He insisted she had made progress, but she could see in his eyes that he was worried. He tried to keep her calm by promising a trip home soon. He believed a change of environment would fix everything. She didn't want to leave. The house had become a place of discovery. The room held answers she could not find anywhere else. Each time he said they would leave soon, she felt panic rise in her chest. She needed more time. The day before they were supposed to leave, she made a decision. She wanted to free the woman in the wallpaper. She believed she was the only person who understood her struggle. She waited until John left for town and Jenny was busy in the kitchen. Then she locked the room door quietly and turned back to the walls. She worked with a strange sense of purpose. She ran her hands along the torn edges and pulled the wallpaper down strip by strip. The sound of ripping filled the room. She tore it off in long sheets, then in small handfuls when the pattern resisted her. Soon tea.